I mean, lots of listeners really like people's background stories, and actually,
Sure.
they yearn for the days when we get a classic episode. And we spend like the first half hour just talking about where someone came from. So yeah, so there's never too much in terms of preamble because I think it sets the scene. Because like whenever I
Sure.
think of your work, I think of curriculum, I think of representation, and like you say, the voice of the maybe the disenfranchised, and just generally values led engagement
Oh, absolutely.
with education and obviously oracy. But we're going to talk about what you sort of when we discussed. You said a human education for an artificial world, which sounds fascinating. What do we mean when we say that? What's the basis of our discussion today?
So I guess this is sort of two lenses. One, when we were developing the whole school approach to finding my voice, obviously as a curriculum specialist, I knew it was more than just a tool. It was a way of being. And it started with culture. So it really began to shape itself as a human education. It's more than an oracy approach. Alongside that, since I began my freelance work and doing public speaking, I have been in researching and aware of the way in which our world was heading and what was going to happen as AI came into our space. I read in 2016 a paper written by Klaus Schwab, who was the founder of the World Economic Forum, called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what he wrote sent chills down my spine. He basically said, where we are heading, this fourth industrial revolution, was either a time of radical positive change, really incredible revolution of change, or it was the beginning of the end of the world. And not to labour too much on the latter, he talked about how education really had to step up and realise the different human competencies that our young people need to be more present, ready, adaptable in the world. He talks about things like having a sense of purpose, greater self-awareness. He talked about the need for young people to be deeply critical thinkers in all senses of the world, not just in their learning, but being able to look at the world in a more critical way. And of course, these are all things that we're talking about. But what really struck me was the fact that we need to be really aware that not only have we got to prepare, and we know intellectually this is the way the world is heading, what we're seeing in our young people on the ground is really quite concerning. So I spend a lot of time in secondary schools and listening to the reality of the anarchic space that our young people occupy, what they are now seeing online, but also most concerningly, the aspect of us not really understanding the truth anymore. Like the concept of truth is become really incredibly distorted, and whose truth is it? And so I feel incredibly passionate about where we are in the world. James Mannion wrote about the education polycrisis. I also talk about the world polycrisis, all these different challenges coming together, geopolitical challenge, climate change, etc. But that's also impacting on the education polycrisis, which is these different challenges making each other worse, white paper, the stress that's causing, for the unknown for our leaders, but also what they're then experiencing at the same time on the ground with behaviour, attendance. We've just got to pause, breathe, and grow a real sense of how we can amplify what's already within our systems and process, and the organic part of our schools that are most important right now, which is the tonic to where the world is, but also from a more robust and rigorous point of view, how can we capture and codify what it is that we need to be doing to grow humans that are ready for whatever the world may be, future unknown. Now, that's not saying we need to throw out anything. It's how do we change the lens and ensure that that lens is deeply human focused? And I can talk a bit more about that.
I think everyone can interpret it slightly differently, but actually, what you've said there, the fact that we're educating the whole person, the whole human, and the fact that the uncertainty in the world that we exist, is phenomenal. It's never been this way. As we've gone from knowing nothing about what was happening around in the world around us to knowing absolutely everything, and then knowing things that aren't even happening. So it's almost like this full circle situation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And the world's got smaller, but more noisy and more complex. And it's a blessing in some ways because our young people are more beautifully connected. And actually, particularly for our neurodivergent young people, that can be incredible because they're able to communicate in ways they weren't before, which has opened a whole world up to them. So we have to be very careful that it's not all doom and gloom. It's just about ensuring, and genuinely, this is what concerns me the most, that we don't devolve and allow AI to evolve in our place. We have to step up, and so we're two parts of the puzzle together, and we are the beautiful human element.
What did they actually do? What was how was the paper structured?
Well, as you say there, it's a meta-analysis. So we're looking at existing studies, and I think there's 45, am I right, papers or studies that were looked at, really to try and gauge that the effectiveness of the formative assessment technique that's being employed. There was a sort of range of techniques looked at, including sort of classroom-based, paper-based, digital-based, and then sort of a discussion and a decision around where these techniques were actually having an impact on student progress or student learning or attainment.
We started with what 550-ish papers, and then as they did their qualification process, they got down to almost 10% of the original thing. But then I suppose that's what these really good meta-analysis does, is it really clearly defines what it's studying, and so no surprises there. But I suppose the bulk of what we're going to look at is, well, what does this then mean? So where do you think the limitations or risks of online platforms begin to emerge, particularly for younger students?
I think motivation, and so I'm going to lead on in a little bit and go in a couple of different areas for this, but because that could be actually a positive, that students are getting instant feedback, that things can be really personalized to them, could be really motivational. But on the other side of that, if a student's potentially working independently and not getting the answers correct or not progressing as the one, maths, I think, is very unique in that things can, you can always find positives. I'm sure you can always find positives, but potentially when an online platform things are correct or incorrect, that could be demotivating for students, especially if they've not built up that resilience. I think that's what we really like, is the autonomy on our platform, that teachers can set really specific things so that they can remove that potential, they can set things that they're expecting the students to get right. There's always links to worked example videos as well. So there is ways around that, but I think especially for students who are potentially beginning to develop some independence and starting to work independently, we don't want to scare them off. We want to support them, and that could be an issue. And I think, again, potentially looking at like more disadvantaged, like school serving disadvantaged students, that balance might be more one way than the other. We don't want to increase any gaps. We're more high attaining students. We do want the high attaining students to keep making progress, but we don't want that to then be an issue when we're teaching in the classroom.
Is that in terms of like access for those people who already do well at maths, want to do the platform more, and then we'll have access to a tablet, that kind of thing? Or is that what you're thinking?
I think there's lots of different parts of that. So yes, access is really important, and that's sort of a lot to do with what I'm doing in my work now. It's so access, physically having a device, having the space and the time to actually be able to complete work in a quiet space is not a luxury that every student has. Again, just having that motivation, that like already having that resilience built up to think, yes, I want to keep working at this. That's sort of another area of it. I think, yeah, it's just, I think there's definitely, there's some schools doing amazing work via our platform, and I think being able to really know what students are doing and prepare them for that works really well. But I mean, yeah, we all know that there's a disadvantage gap as soon as students start school, and at the minute that is just widening as students go through the year. So I think it's to be responsible to think about that and think how we are supporting to close that gap as opposed to extend it.
And so you've got different stages to how you utilize journaling.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
shall we take them one at a time? And
absolutely.
We can go through. So if you wanted to, so step one or stage one of your process, what does it entail to start with?
Okay, so I'll caveat this first. If I accidentally slip into talking about Trev, right, it will all become clear, but Trevor is just the name that my little people in my year 5 class have assigned to what we've done. So the first step is we've called it download, okay? And Trev is a little character. I just needed a visual cue. I just need something for them to hold on to as a bit of a scaffold. So we've got this little clip arty robot character, and the first stage is download. And that is simply 2 steps really, but 2 steps that they were literally never ever doing before this. So the first being, okay, so I'm doing, let's say I was doing area and perimeter today, and we were revisiting it after about 3 months of not doing it. I just wanted to dip my toe in and see where we were. So it was, right, in our download, let's just, as the kids put it, not as eloquently as I'd like, brain dumping. It's like, ugh. But anyway, brain dumping, what they know in terms of what they can recall about area and perimeter, what they can recall about maybe calculations they've done in the past. It's the first time actually that I've seen them flicking back through their book, because to be honest, it was a bit like, we've done that, we're never going back again. Whereas now they're flicking back through and having a good look. And then the second part to the download is, what's the question that I'm facing right now? And what do I need to pull out of that question that is going to combine with this prior knowledge to help me solve this problem? So it's a more, I see it as a more creative, more joined up way of, when I was an NQT, it was, let's underline all the keywords in your word problem. That is essentially that kind of thinking, but not as mechanical as that, just actually sitting and downloading everything from your brain onto your page. First bit of your book is your download, but also not doing that in isolation. So we've done a lot of modeling together. So I would do it, they would do it, we'd do it together. A lot of discussion. So they'll sit down and they'll do their download bit together, combining ideas. But it really is just to try and start those cogs whirring and get it down on the page, get all those little scribblings, jottings down. So it's there in front of them to refer back to. Then when we've done the download, we move into the investigate phase. That's what we've called it. And we've got our little investigate Trev who stands there with his laptop. And that's simply the problem solving. Now, for my lot, it was the absolute fear they had at this point of, well, what do we write? And we've done a lot of work with anything and everything that comes into your mind that you think might be part of this problem. If it's a drawing, if it's a doodle, if it's an array, if it's a whatever, just put it down on the page, because every bit of information there could be useful. Even the stuff that's actually useless and wrong, ultimately, it's still got value because you're capturing it, which for my able learners absolutely freaked them out to start with, because they never got things wrong. They didn't like getting things wrong. They wanted the page to look pristine and all in columns and beautiful. And yeah, that's lovely. But actually, they weren't functional because of that. As a mathematician, they were just performing procedures. So we did a lot of work, again, me modeling, because I've got now my own maths book. So I've got the same maths book as them. I've got my visualizer, which is a godsend. And for the first, I'd say month, 2 months of doing this, it was, my book was there at every stage. I was doing it with them or before them, or pausing and coming back to mine. And that's freed them up no end. And it's been really lovely to see how dynamic they are at that point, that the alternative ways they're looking at things and the experiments they're doing is just like awesome and amazing. And then you get into the final phase. I say final phase because I'm tweaking and adapting, but I'll tell you about them in a minute. So the final phase then is the communicate. So you got your little communicate, Trev, stick him in. And alongside that, it's a case of, okay, so you've done all this working out, you've done all this problem solving. Let's go back to the original question. What was it? Let's give some really detailed explanation, proof, evidence, justification, not just the answer is. Go further. What did you find as you were going through it? Did it work well? Did you come up to a dead end? Did you have to rethink your approach? Just really getting them to just start talking about maths, but writing it down as well as discussing it with partners and peers. So that was the original structure that I put in, which is still working well today. And they're loving it. I think ultimately my goal would be that we don't need, as much as I love him, we don't need the little Trebs anymore. Little Trebs can disappear, and they'll just put as a transitional thing a little side heading in their maths book of download and investigate and communicate. But they need at the minute certainly that scaffold to hold them together. As we've gone further with that, I've thrown in the pause point of little Trev in a car, because I love a bit of Canva clip art. That's my freeway. I emphasize freeway because some people mishear me. Freeway Trev, and that's basically if you've already got through the download of this together and you just want to go and crack on because you've seen where we're going and you know how to do it, fly free, go for it. And then that leaves me to be able to focus on those children that need a bit more from me ultimately. So that's a little tweak we've done, and also ultimately I'm trying to phase out the visuals and just keep the structure. But that honestly, it's transformed this very reticent group of learners who just seem scared of maths a lot. And it's busy now in my class. It's awesome. It's not just go away and get on with your work. It's I'm on the carpet. They're back and forth to me. They're wandering off and having chats to each other. They're using the maths wall because they never really used that before. They're just finding the purpose in maths and that they've got control over it. It's not being done to them. Because as much as I didn't want to for a long time, it felt like I was delivering maths to them and they were just passively receiving it. And if they understood it, they were great. If they didn't, well, okay. And that never sat well with me, but I didn't have any other way to get to them. And this has been the way to sort of break through that barrier I had, I suppose. So it's been a godsend.
You say you're going to phase out Trev, but I think those kind of cues can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Like I especially freeway Trev. Understand like if you as a teacher say, oh, they've gone and they've decided they're going off this direction, even if they drive too far down the autobahn or whatever it is, at least what their intention was at the time. So
and actually I am one for an analogy. We also make it clear that you might have hit the freeway, but you might have got halfway down and thought, I can't do this, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, turn around and come back to me. That's absolutely fine, because that's just part of the process anyway. So it's not, no one's locked in. I haven't had ability groups in my class for a long time. Even though technically in our school we were meant to, but I've always been one of those sort of like compliant rebels who would toe the line of the policy, but just smudge it a bit because I knew that it was professionally the right thing to do. But even that, they still put themselves in boxes naturally. I don't see that now. They're just, some days they're going off and taking the challenge. Some days they're staying with me because they're thinking, oops, I'm really not getting this today. I need a bit more help. So it's made it much more fluid and I think more equitable. There's not like a hierarchy in there now. We're just all doing maths and exploring and experimenting, and that's got a buzz. I love it.
They know the unspoken hierarchy. I've had tours of schools where kids have told me the hierarchy, and I'm like, wow, you should not know that, but clearly, you're obviously not silly, and how how social animals work.
Absolutely.
So the fact that to get to that point where everybody's working towards the same goal, you've got this almost like everyone's constructing their understanding them and the meaning of the mathematics, together. I think it's the dream, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's honestly, and I think for some of them, I had some of my able ones who saw maths as a race. It was right. If I get all these done in the next 4.5 seconds, it don't matter if I get some mistakes. I just need to get them done. That is like evaporated. Whereas now it's not a race and it's not a competition. It's, I want to solve this. I want to beat it. I want to work out what it is and get to the other side of it, and it's just changed that attitude towards it. It's something that we're doing together. It's not something we're competing against each other to be the best at.
You say that. My oldest, we have had some homeworks that because they're not perfect, they have become really big, like sticking points, really emotional Sundays.
Yeah.
And he's going to secondary school next year. And I'm in the back of my mind thinking, actually, that things could get quite tricky because the bar will be, in terms of the amount and the frequency of homework, it's going to go up, isn't it? So maybe I need to start working on this journaling with him. Maybe I need to introduce him to Trev and give him those tools, because 100% sounds like, those children who succeed in maths and have only ever known success.
Yes.
They want instant gratification, don't they? We all know them.
And it was like, you could tell the first few weeks of joining me in year 5, they absolutely hated me when it came to maths, because first of all, I was making them prove what they were doing. I was making them explain what they were doing, and they weren't getting praise for finishing first. It was, the praise was coming from, you've really gone deep with this. You really understood it. And I broke them eventually, and they did give in and go, right, I'll go and do my proof now before you ask me for it again. And it was an important change for them, because I could see them like moving beyond me into year 6, and as you say, into secondary school, and that fragile state of mind that they had just becoming worse and worse and worse. So we had to sort of, be cruel to be kind into a certain extent, and just break them out of that now. And like the bit of it that makes me go, yeah, this is working, is right now it's, as I said, it's report writing season, and we get our children to write themselves a little report comment. So I've set it for their homework, so I'm not influencing it. I've got a couple of questions. What am I most proud of? What do you think I've achieved this year? I've already had about half of them back in, and all of those have commented on maths and problem solving being the thing they're most proud of this year. And that's just like, wow, this is amazing. And this isn't just those able learners. This is the ones who find it really tough. Probably the most determined ones in my class, to be honest, because they find it tough. But they are recognizing that they've made a leap and they've changed and their attitude's different. And if that's coming from them, then, my job's done. I'm happy with that.